Welcome to Live Genre Chronicles. I still don't have the intro ramble done for this. Every time I forget because it's like 2 months instead of one. Anyway, we're here to discuss RPGs from Japan generally, and something like that. We have a lot to say. I'm Val, and much like Kobato, I also suffered through the events of Caligula Effect 1, and I'm very mad about it.
I'm Becky. I don't have a joke because it's in the real world and I forgot it.
I'm Leroy, and I was a teenage Ruto.
Oh, what this does not capture is Leroy justifying this joke exactly as Ryuto would 10 years, 15 years on, and it's chef's kiss.
Right before we went live, we realized none of us had thought of a joke.
Yep.
And no, we realized that me and Val hadn't thought of jokes, and Leroy was like, I've got a joke, and I said, is it about being Ryuto?
Not only did I have that, but I had it like 3 weeks ago, just like Ruto would. So I'm ready for this.
Yes, exactly.
I'll save this for later.
Well, excellent work.
Excellent work.
Young Master Prodigy.
Oh my god. So
You know the depths of it though. Did you know that when I was a teenager, I thought that I needed to do something so great that it would change the world? I had that. Maybe I don't think everyone has that. I don't think everyone has that problem, right? Not everyone.
For what it's worth, I do too.
Okay.
And I still do.
I'm the odd one out.
Yeah.
I hated how much I was like, okay, I did this. This was me.
So anyway, today we're going to be talking about Caligula Effect 2, and by, connection, Caligula Effect 1 or Overdose, which is the version that we played, which is, it has been called Persona-like, and I don't think that's unfair. But the premise is that you, the player character, and several other people are trapped. Well, several other people. Lots of people get stuck in essentially a Matrix simulation sort of deal run by a Vocaloid. And there are... Maggie, I'm gonna hurt you, and you know why. Anyway, yeah. The producers of the Vocaloids who make the music make all the songs for the dungeons and stuff, but also they're like using that music to brainwash the populace of the school that it takes place at. Where to go from there?
I mean, so like the actual like inciting incident is that the playable characters are people who like figure this out basically one way or another, figure out that they're living in a virtual world, and they decide that they're going to try to get out of the virtual world back to the real world, which requires them to not only defeat the villains who are maintaining this, who are called the musicians, but also requires them to confront the fact that they are very different people in very different circumstances in the real world. And that's where the game makes a lot of its most interesting narrative hay.
Yeah. The premise for both is, in the first game you just kind of join up with, but in the second game you essentially found the Go Home Club, which is a joke about how if you're not in any clubs, you're in the Go Home Club because you just go home after school. But this one, they want to go home. That's the entire joke. The funniest part of fucking Caligula 1 was this joke. And they reused it for the sequel. So
yeah, so Leroy and Val have both played Caligula 1. I haven't. I watched Val play a little bit of it. And let's just say that none of us had a good experience with Caligula 1.
I liked it.
Did you? Okay.
I liked it, yeah. I did like it.
I think the only person who had a good experience with the Caligula Effect one was Doll, who was in chat when I got the drop backup Sexbot as a stigma in Caligula Effect 1, because that was a moment to just have happen in the middle of the stream.
Holy shit, I missed that.
No, you didn't. You were there for it.
Was I?
Yes.
Fuck it, I wasn't. I apologize. I was not paying nearly enough attention. Okay, so stigmas are basically the accessories, the equipment items.
Yeah.
And one of the things with Caligula Effect is that one way or another they named everything after like mental health terminology
or personality traits.
Or personality traits. It's that kind of thing. So there's no elemental magic system, but you have all these different like things that are named after psych terminology one way or another. And at its best, the item naming in this game is unparalleled for its ability to make you just
Hey, Maggie,
gape in awe that somebody did that.
Maggie, but you're joking. There is a weapon in this game called dysphoria. Like,
yep,
that's literally a thing.
I think depression wasn't an armor item rather than a weapon. There definitely was a pickup called depression.
I don't remember anything just called. Was there? The first game had one that was just called depression, but I don't remember anything on the notes like that in the second one.
Yeah. I mean, the armor has the second game as armor towards the end of the game had rejection was one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. There was a sequence of amazing named armor pickups. I can't remember any of them. I streamed the whole thing. You can go and watch my streams, but like, just
yeah, they're all like the idea of like different personality traits and concepts being made into an item that you can equip for stat gains is extremely funny, especially when they get so esoteric.
Yeah, it's one of those things that really tells you about the importance of text in a game, like the amount of difference you can make by just stripping out all the conventional RPG nouns and replacing them with bullshit that nobody should get away with, is incredible. This game, the vibe is wild.
When I found out that Takuya Yamanaka, so that's the director and writer of both games.
Mm-hmm.
But when I found out that he was a psych major and also a therapist before getting into games, I was like, that just makes so much sense. I even think in the way the sort of the social links, I don't want to call them that, but I don't know what to call them for people who don't know them. The character episodes, the way they're structured, it models CBT a lot, like literally. I observed that before I knew. I was like, wow, this is just CBT. And then later I found out, like, wait, it probably is, like, literally supposed to be CBT.
Yeah, that's cognitive behavioral therapy for the perverts in the chat. No, the first one was the other CBT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doll in chat mentions off as a comparison point, and I think that's pretty good for like effects of terminology. The other thing I was thinking about was the like Paper Mario games. We talked about this when we played Paper Mario back on the old cast. Was like stripping out all the nouns and replacing them with a bespoke set of nouns made a huge difference there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think this is just, I think it's true that Caligula expanded my concept of the genre, which is like that's like big props for something in the box game space.
Yeah, like
this is something I mean, it doesn't always happen, but I always have the latent expectation when I go to like RPG Maker space or like small games or even indie games. You know, I'm expecting some kind of personal touch, some kind of like individual obsession to like pop out at me. I don't really have that expectation with box games as much, like unless it's like a certain whatever. But yeah, this really surprised me because it still feels part of the genre, but also feels outside of it. Like it just like redraws the boundaries a bit in my head.
That's interesting because, like, my feeling from it systemically is actually that ultimately it's a very core expression of what RPGs are about, and it's just really well executed.
Yeah, no, that is interesting because that's like almost opposite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, in terms of its RPG stuff, I think we all really enjoyed it. Like,
Yeah.
What it does with what we have seen a lot of in other RPGs is really compelling.
I
And-
suppose there's a sense of like, so let's say RPGs from I don't know what the right word is, but from the 90s on, the post Final Fantasy RPG, this sort of takes the subtext and turns it into text. So of course it's been there. It's not like it wasn't there.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it depends a little bit how you frame what you're talking about vis-a-vis RPG systems. Because when I say that, I'm thinking primarily about how like the combat and the leveling and the numbers stuff works.
Yeah.
And for the vibe, I'm thinking primarily in terms of, well, this is what Persona would be if it was good. Which we've been joking backstage about, like, exactly how much we're going to talk about Persona. I think this is what Persona would be if it was good. And I find it very hard to imagine this game existing in a game in a world in which Persona hadn't been the scale of breakout success that it has been.
Yeah.
A lot of it feels on the surface very Persona. You've got the kind of SMT style level design. You've got it's school kids. The school is itself a level, and it's designed with the same kind of spatial logic. You have the character stories, although they are significantly better structured than Personas normally are. It has a little bit the Persona problem that the character stories are their own side thing and you can miss them.
The first one, so Leora and I talked about this. The first one is a lot worse, and a lot more interesting because they're in Overdose. There was a character added who basically he's a real piece of shit, and if you progress through a social link, you will eventually get to a point where you can kick him out, and that's how you're.
Not only kick him, I have to say you get to beat his ass and then kick him out.
Yeah,
nice.
But also, like, if you don't do that, a different character dies at the emotional climax of the game. If you don't want to deal with him, so you don't like play with him in your party and don't get his like affinity up high enough to do his social link chapters, and then beat his ass and kick him out, it just like walls you off from like a good third of the social links with the rest of the cast.
He's also a horrible abrasive character, so I think they're trolling a little bit.
Yeah,
I feel like
that game really just does not want you to feel good when you play it, does it?
No.
Not really. Yeah.
That's also
it reminded me of.
It
reminded me of Dostoevsky. That's why I'm kind of like just slightly defensive of it. But it feels bad in similar ways. It's very polyvocal in that sense. It's also very miserable. Like it's tons of perspectives that are all like not very good.
Yeah, the thing I was gonna say is that the Caligula Effect, quote, is a quote unquote is a psychological phenomenon apparently exclusive to Japanese psychology in its description, where the more you're not supposed to do something, the more you want to do it. And I feel like that's like maybe supposed to be what the fuck the tone is doing in the first game, is like maybe you're not supposed to want to, or like maybe you aren't supposed to hang out with the dude who's a fucking arsonist and a murderer, but like you need
Major
to.
spoilers.
It's fucking Caligula 1 and not even the version that counts. Like, so like, if you don't hang out with this dude enough, even though he's a wretched piece of shit, a different character who is more tolerable sacrifices himself for a story beat and
He's
locks
probably
you.
actually the only pure character in the game. He's the only
Yes.
one who's like, I'm just a normal guy. I don't know why I'm here.
He's a little bit of a himbo, but like it's fine. Like he's a very stupid large man of a puppy dog, but it's just like
He doesn't even have a phone. He heard the song on the street and got warped in the world. It's like, what?
yeah.
God, maybe the Caligula effect in question is the designers thought they were themselves under the Caligula effect.
Yeah. But yeah, like Caligula 1 has the social links worse. Okay, they also throw like fucking 7 party members at you at the start. Like you start out with too many people around you. Like Caligula Effect 2 builds, you have like progression, you get new characters who are introduced, and then you spend time with them in dungeons that are like, yeah, you should spend time with this, so we're gonna have this character, so we're gonna have a plot beat, so like it forces you to have just them and someone else in your party and like give them time to develop character, and also for you to get used to their battle stuff. No such fucking thing in the Caligula Effect Overdose. It's just like, oh yeah, you're gonna join the Go Home Club. After 45 minutes, you'll have more than a full team. Fucking figure it out. And also that entire time you're gonna be hearing the same Vocaloid song, and it will restart every time you leave battle.
Yeah, like the music is definitely better implemented in the second game.
For sure. I don't always want to rag on the Vita, but also the Vita stank is so heavy on the first game. It cannot escape.
I mean, even the second game feels kind of Vita-ish, but
it doesn't.
Feels.
Please,
I mean,
yeah.
It's like residually PS3 if we're gonna go there.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, you know, if there are people who are like nostalgic for the Vita, it's like Vita nostalgia game kind of deal. You know, it's like, oh, this is the good parts that I remember from those games ages ago, and less of the like tedium and poorly thought out lack of polish and so on.
I'll just put it this way. Idea Factory makes games that have kind of the same vibe that aren't also Vita games. But like,
yep.
It's just kind of like it's just kind of like a B tier threshold of polish and design like archetypes.
Caligula 2 still has Neptunia vibes, if that turns.
I would disagree.
That's like the worst way to say it. Really?
Yeah, like
I think it does. Still.
It is slightly too good to have Neptunia vibes. But
well,
like, I get where you're coming from.
Like the presentation, production values, the polish, the stuff I don't care about, but someone on Reddit or Backlog, like, ooh.
I mean, the same could be said about like the first entry of Trails of Cold Steel. Like,
yeah,
but sure. Like that got better. I know that got better. Fucking Falcom fans won't shut the fuck up about Trails. So, but like, you know how Falcom is always like a generation behind in terms of like graphical fidelity, but they work on all the other shit. It feels like half a step back, and they did some other work on Caligula 2. Like that's kind of the weird like gray zone that Caligula 2 is in. It's really good, but like I feel like they definitely, it has Vita lineage, but not any Vita vibes to me. That is the sweet spot they found. And I like the dungeons. The fact that I went, oh man, is the school festival gonna be a dungeon? And then it was? That shit's cool. Like it's all augmented by them actually like doing things, even if the actual designs of the areas are a little samey.
Yeah, I like how there's a balance between like they have this naturalistic idea of spaces, but occasionally it gets kind of like backrooms feeling. I think they did a good job with like the limits they set for the environments in the second game.
Yeah, you know, like when you revisit, because all the dungeons are also locations in the world, and when you revisit them to do side quests, some of them get a bit confusing, especially the fucking train station.
That is not the case for me, but I'm
Train
also
stations confuse me in real life, so
yeah.
I mean, I get travel stress streams that are often like the train station in this game.
exactly.
But also, no train stations I've ever been to have actually been like that.
It's an AI's dream of the train station.
Yeah,
it's like literally.
I mean, it doesn't help that actually when I say the train station, it's actually 3 separate train stations, and you can walk along the train tracks between them.
Yep.
And they're not that the save points are not mutually like transferable. That was what was getting me confused when I was doing it. Not the Kudan part and the
oh yeah, no, the
yeah.
Kudan and leading up to Amore is its own separate little dungeon. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we're gonna do a dungeon in a shopping mall. We're gonna do a dungeon in a hospital, and also a school festival, and an aquarium was the first one, and they went with a planetarium for this one. It's way better.
The planetarium fucking rules. Like that the shapes of the space in the planetarium are just so rich to be in.
Yeah, whether it's the like the art exhibit part or the actual planetarium bits, it's just kind of like, wow, they really wanted to make this feel like an actual thing that at least someone would have put together, if not like a sane person.
Like you step into the more like naturalistically museumy bits, and it's like, oh yeah, all of these look like real pieces of a real place. And I think the hospital's quite good at that as well. Even the botanical garden.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the spatial logic is pretty good. The combat really feels like a maturation of a whole bunch of ideas that we've encountered around the place.
Yeah.
Like we've compared it to Grandia because of it's real time. It's all about picking your moment to use your moves that will interrupt enemy moves so that they don't go off.
And the risk system is the post FF13, obviously,
extremely,
too.
Yeah. Settle an argument for us, Leroy. Do you think that enemies are easier to interrupt at a higher risk?
I did not see that as being a thing that happens.
Yeah, did you ever have enemies where your interrupts didn't work on them?
Yeah, but it seemed to be based on the attack rather than the risk level.
Yeah, there is
a principle where the higher risk they are, the more likely you are to do a risk break, which will interrupt them too. So like change your strategy.
But like Becky is specifically saying like her melee counters weren't working at lower risk, which is just not true. And I think she just missed the window for them by a couple frames.
There is a strange variance. There's a hidden stat that this game actually doesn't explain as well as the first game, in my opinion. There's like it's represented by a little teeny sword on each of your attack values, and that's like its interrupt value. And it works just like Kingdom Hearts cards, right? So the enemy might have an attack that has a 1, and then you'll put up an attack that has a 2, you will interrupt it while they're casting it. But if they're putting up an attack that has a 3, or I feel like the enemies can even do 4s and 5s and you can't, then you can't really interrupt them.
Yeah, so there's 2 tiers of interrupt.
Yeah,
basically there's counters, which are like you have a move that says melee counter, and if the enemy you're attacking is preparing a move that is a melee type move, and you use that, it doesn't just cancel their cast, it also like knocks them back or throws them up in the air, or generally it's a pretty big deal to get that kind of counter.
Yeah, there is a hard when there is a melee, a ranged, or a guard. You can use a melee counter, range counter, or a guard break while that move is active at all, which you can't see the timeline, but you know that there's a short window after the actual animation finishes and before they start standing still where they like are still valid for that. But like, if you go too
Like-
early, if you go just a little too late with those hits, if they miss or like if they just don't connect, which is a different thing because sometimes your animations get locked in position and they whiff because they
Yes.
dodge to the side or whatever or hop back. But like if you, and also there's an accuracy set. Sometimes shit just misses.
Yes.
But like
The game has like the whole like video editing UI, right? So
Yeah.
you can position your moves in like the temporal space, like the actual time,
yeah,
and then you can decide when they go off. It's really unique.
yeah, but like counters work if they are if the logic follows that they are doing a melee move and you hit them with a melee counter during that move, it works. If you're looking for an interrupt, that's different and that's a different problem. But like risk doesn't play a part in the counter system, at least.
I'm sure.
One thing I struggled with early on is there is the melee type move, but then there is also like the contact type move. The contact type move is symbolized by like a little dagger. But the little dagger will not have the melee on top if it's not a melee type. But it'll still be a contact type and not a melee type, and you can't counter it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a little bit like
like realizing that you could consistently interrupt those if you had a move with a high enough sword score, made a huge difference to my strategy in the late game.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like I have a bunch of moves that have sword 3, and most of those enemy moves are shield 2. So I probably can like prevent them going off, or at least stall them on those moves.
Yeah,
I think the game naturally like shifts your playstyle too. At first, it's really focused on the melee and range counters to get you accustomed to the system, and then once you start having more options, then it's like okay, the enemies aren't going to be doing these as often, and then you have to like think on your feet.
Yeah, and it does a thing which I think is becoming, like. It is a good solution to a thing that RPGs from Japan have been trying to do for over a decade, which is that there's no depletion. You, like, at the end of every battle, your action points recover to full, and so in the battle, you can always choose any move, and there's no, like, default basic attack. You know, there's rarely any reason to use the lowest tier attack move that's the default for the attack cursor. So it always is encouraging you to know what all your moves do and to make use of all of them, and all your like buff spells and that's there's no reason to like hold back to conserve MP for the boss or anything.
Yeah. For
So-
the record, I basically never buffed because I never had to, but
I did a bunch of buffing because I'm a coward.
Yep, and also used Nico instead of Marie.
Yeah.
Oh, Final Party. I'm curious. What did people use?
Final Party. Gone.
I went Kiriko, Marie, Sasura because Kiriko had Omokiri Plus, which means if I ambushed an enemy, pushed them to 5 risk, immediately went for a fucking murderous combo of Omokiri, Pinwheel, Maihime, and just murdered the shit out of basically anything that wasn't a boss. And even a bosses sometimes.
Yeah.
Kiriko's like having a second protagonist.
Yeah.
She's so strong.
Yeah. I had Sasura, Kiriko, Nico. I probably would have played with Marie, except that like there's a big chunk in the middle of the game where she's not available for plot reasons, and I got used to Nico in that time.
Nico is so slow.
She's so
I
slow.
like Nico is good for juggling. It's actually the techs you can do with the mines are really fun. I just for fun, I see how long I could keep a boss up. I just kept them up forever.
Yeah, like the one thing the game has, and like this is another thing that Japanese RPGs have been doing more and more. I think probably again since FF13 is like you can launch enemies, and juggling enemies is really fun and really funny. And because this game gives you such like good control over the timings of when your moves happen, it's really easy to keep a juggle going.
Yeah, it's the battle system I have seen described as what if you were video editing a DMC med, like a combo med, and it's just like, okay, yeah, I see that, I feel that, I love it.
That's pretty dope.
And
But yeah, I used a. Oh, sorry.
no,
Are
I'm
you
just
gonna
gonna
finish
like, it's a good game. Like after the first game, I was just like, this is really fucked up in a way that I don't know if like anyone could balance properly. And then they got to the second game, and I'm like, fuck, they did it. It's really good.
I will say this is a humble brag, but I had like when I was playing the first game, I was like, okay, I know how to balance this. Here's what I do. And I play the second game, they do literally all these ideas I had. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, like literally, like one of my
they hired the man.
Yeah, they really did. Fucking like one of my ideas was like, okay, so there's no way to like interrupt the timeline, and then they were like, here's voltage, and I was just like, no, what, you're fine. This is all fine. You're good in my books. And then everything else landed. I'm like, yeah, this is just good.
Yeah.
I gotta finish. I need to say who I used.
Yes.
Sorry.
I used again, of course, and then I used Ryuto, and I used Nico, and I did not pick based on synergy. I just picked my 3 favorites and went down.
Good.
But the cool thing is that Ryuto has a launcher on his like stress move, and then I could use. So if I just use a stress move on turn 1, I could lock any boss and then just win. That wasn't fun though, so I stopped doing it.
Yeah, like I did a few dungeons and also like running back through some dungeons for some side quests with Ryuto, Gin, and Nico as well. And that's like, I also swapped Gin out for Kobato at one point, and it's just like this is a really funny group. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Why?
The sad thing, Gin is just so slow. I think
Yeah.
he's really strong, but he needs so much setup that, and the game's just like doesn't require all that. It doesn't. It has like, there's all these dependencies that remind me of a gacha game where you can make your damage mods go crazy, but there's pretty much no reason to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not a terribly hard game. For better or worse.
I liked the progression, right? Because at the beginning it is more difficult, I think, in the beginning, and you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of options. And then as you feel gradually in the arc of the game, it's even text when Ryuto shows up that the party literally gets better at fighting, and then they're a lot better at the end. And I think that's always a neat thing to do in an RPG.
Mhm. Even if
Yeah.
Becky didn't use Ryuto at all, basically.
It's what he deserves, the little snot-nosed brat.
I used him a bit off stream when I was doing side quest stuff, just to see like, could I level him up enough to unlock some more character story, because I did want to know what his deal was. But I didn't get very far with that.
The problem in this game, Ryuto kind of sucks. I love dodge tank characters, but if his level variance is off just a little bit, he just will get hit and die. Like,
Yeah,
it's just so strict, and he doesn't have anything like say Dunban. He doesn't have any like cheat mode stuff that actually dodge. He
Yeah,
has to rely on just his stats, and so he just dies.
yeah. The problem is like
It's pretty funny actually, though.
the main problem I have with this game in terms of like difficulty balancing ish is like people in the reserve only get half experience, which is like they could have just not done that. Like,
Yeah,
They
or-
really
or
old
not did that.
or they could have added something to like, remove that penalty later on. Like that would be something you could do for a side quest, and it's like, oh yeah, key helps people in the back also get experience now. But it's like, no.
Mhm.
So I ended up playing kind of weird parties because I wanted to get everyone's social link up and also to keep their levels relatively balanced, short of the MC who you can't remove, of course. But it's just like there are a lot of little tweaks that I would like if there was a Caligula 3, and I'm willing to play a Caligula 3, which is something I could not have expected when I started playing Caligula 1 and it started throwing fucking fatphobia and transphobia everywhere. But
Yeah, like, I mean, so yeah, there are little quality of life things that I'd love for a Caligula 3. For me, most importantly, would be like a fast forward button, because when you are like programming in actions, when you're like choosing the timing for them, it will run through a simulation of what's going to happen. but it only runs through it at 1.0 speed, and it runs through it from the beginning every time if you make even the slightest change to your timings.
Mm-hmm.
And it would really help if that was like at 2 times speed or whatever.
I would also really like the ability to, like, at the start of battle, or maybe when you go into voltage or some other, like, move that you can do, just, like, give you full control and be able to swap between all of your party members who are in sync and ready to roll for a turn. Like, being able to swap back and forth would be really good for, like, burst damage, and having
there seemed to be like a hidden speed check or something, right? It was kind of annoying because I don't know, like you want the characters to go after each other, and you can't really have any. You don't really have any control over that.
Yeah, if like Kiriko
there's also a wait button
comes up,
give us a wait button.
Yeah, give us a wait button. Also, and this is a thing that I really feel should have been somewhere in the game, and maybe it wasn't. I didn't find it. Some sort of way of controlling your initial formation, because like I've seen that in games for over a decade that were like this, that were kind of quasi 3D environment for the battle stuff. And it's so often your characters will start out in the battle all grouped up together and be immediately hit by the enemy's first AoE. And enemies in this game have some pretty brutal small area AoEs.
Yeah, but on the counter side, on the flip side, emergency guard or dash, like I don't disagree, but also the game does have options for you to just nerf those immediately.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of interesting the way it's designed in general. It's that every enemy is very deadly, but they're also like very easily like I don't know what's the word, crowd control, I guess. It's very easy to subdue one, so you're kind of juggling. You're juggling, like you're spinning plates more than anything.
Overall, I really like it as an encounter design philosophy, and also like it doesn't have many enemy types. There's probably like 6, 7 generic enemy types in the game, but I never really got bored of fighting them. Yeah, it makes good use of their combinations.
You did get exasperated every time you saw one with the fucking Doc Ock arms, though.
I mean, I got exasperated because that's because they're mean, and they're one of the harder types to actually establish that control over.
Not in my experience, but yeah.
It's fair to say the battles like take a while too, right? They take longer than average for
mainly
games, at least for recent games.
Mainly because of like having to fiddle with the timeline so much, like that issue of like having to watch the simulation play out over and again. I actually didn't feel that I was taking as long in the combat as like, because I complained when we did the Xenoblade episode that Xenoblade combat feels like it takes forever to me. This felt way lighter going than Xenoblade.
Oh, really?
But I think that's just because a big part of it is that I was always fiddling with stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's more engaging. I feel like I make a lot of decisions when I play the game. It also makes me a little tired, like I'm playing a tactics game. Because it is that kind of tactic style of like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this.
Yeah, it's a lot higher energy, even if it is a bit longer. So you probably felt the higher energy state of it more than the length of it.
Yeah, I was constantly being surprised at how long I'd been playing for when doing dungeon sections, because it wouldn't feel like time had passed, and I'd quite happily sit through 2 hours of a dungeon in this game. It's been a long time since I played an RPG where I felt like that.
The thing I would disagree with that early on. Once I got past the halfway point, I more agree with that. I just feel like early on, especially, there's not a lot of incentive to try very hard to do good at the battles. And once you have more tools and swap and go, actually, I should just turn off auto battle, which is a skill trap. The dungeons get better, but like they were still like, I would sit down and go, I think maybe the earlier dungeons just take longer too, just like a little bit, and that was enough to push me over the edge where I was just like, okay, I am like 2/3 of the way through this dungeon. I need a break.
Also, you want more challenge than I do generally, and this game does not have a lot of challenge to offer.
Those early dungeons are actually. I played on hard. Those early dungeons actually are kind of they poke you in the eye for some reason. It's like actually really hard on hard. It became a game of pseudo resource management because there were fights that if I didn't have my stress move or my voltage, I would game over.
Yeah.
And the game like gradually loosens up on that. I didn't try extreme like it, but I thought that was how the game was going to go the whole time. So I was surprised it kind of levels out and it's not super strict.
Yeah, it's got that problem with difficulty that like basically all games have, but I kind of point at like I
Dragon Quest doesn't.
Yeah, but that's a lot more set of simple verbs. It's just like there's a lot of games that have a problem with toolkits where like before you have kind of like a threshold of your toolkit where like you can react to things properly, it's more difficult because you don't have the quote proper tool for things. And part of designing a game is designing around that. Which is, yeah, I think they did. I was playing on normal, you were playing on hard. I think they did all right with that on normal at least. But it feels like if you're playing this game on hard, you ask for it to be hard.
Yeah, it has like the classic Final Fantasy V thing where as you understand the systems better, you will get more efficient and develop better combos and then just kind of cut through everything. But that is also fun. That is also why I play RPGs.
Anyway, it plays really well. It's like,
yeah, we don't usually lead with the mechanical side of things, but it plays really well.
And it feels like a payoff for a bunch of things that I've been watching Japanese RPG designers try to do, going back quite a long way. You know, it's got some spatiality, it's got some temporality to the combat. It's not just like old school Dragon Quest turn taking, like hard limited turn taking. It's very fluid. It doesn't have lots of like terrible awkward edge cases like something like a Resonance of Fate does.
Yeah. I've been since we started this mess, and since I played Tales of Fantasia, I've been like really keenly aware of how real time versus turn based has been like a spectrum, and how different games are on that spectrum. And it's really funny that this feels more real time to me than Tales of Fantasia, even though it's turn based.
Yeah, and it encourages us to make finer grained distinctions. Like, this is a game where it pauses in the menu when you're choosing your regular moves, whereas Tales of Fantasia doesn't. Like, the action is live unless you hit a specific pause button.
Yeah.
It kind of conveys the feeling of doing micro and RTS, honestly.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Especially if you make a lot of use of repositioning.
Yeah.
Which I did sometimes.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating system, and I'm glad it exists. Because, like, it really is just video editing. Which is really funny.
Another thing I want to give it props for is I think it really individuates the characters. And it's something I brought up on the cast a lot, is how battles are an opportunity to further characterize the characters in this. Some games do it well, some games don't do it at all. But I feel like Caligula is really like self-aware that, you know, these battles are mostly allegorical, and, you know, they're fighting in order to accomplish something. Some like personal goal or something. So anyways, all the characters like have a fighting style that feels natural to their personalities, and it develops over time as the characters develop. But it's just really it's really satisfying to see the interplay between the systems and the story like that.
Yeah. It definitely, like, the characters all have their own really distinct feels. And I wonder also, because like, you go back to the early days of Japanese RPGs, and there isn't a lot of that. And then games like Final Fantasy VII come along, which have this really strong characterization, and each character has their own like special deal. Or I guess like you can say that for FF6 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that individuation, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And then you have another like 20 years of deconstruction and reconstruction. And so the people who worked on this game have had all that time to see these systems pulled apart and tinkered with. And that pays off in the level of understanding that's on display here of what you're trying to do with systems like this. And that gets to that self-awareness. The sense of, we're making an RPG. We know we're making an RPG. An RPG is a specific attitude to like prevailing game design ideologies, and the stuff that we've called naturalism before. And we're just going to do the thing. And to the extent that it kind of brings it into real time and into a live virtual space, it's not doing that out of an aspiration to be like a real-time action game at all. It's because that's an interesting way to expand RPG systems.
Yeah, it's not like they're aiming for trying to be DMC and missing.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that was Final Fantasy 16?
You could say that, but me and Becky liked FF16, so
I didn't play it. That's why I asked.
Me liking FF16 might be proof that is not an unfair thing to say. Because I would really struggle with a true DMC, but FF16 was DMC enough for me to feel like I was doing something vaguely DMC-ish without getting walled by the fact that I suck at DMC-ish thing.
That too is the RPG appeal. It feels as if you're doing something else.
Yep.
Video editing in this case.
Yep.
Which I happen to be quite good at.
It sounds really unfair or like tedious. I swear it's not. It's just
it's
really
satisfying.
Funny. Yeah.
It's just you line up the little things in the right places, and then a sequence of events plays out, and it looks and feels good.
Yeah.
It's also very like audio editing and stuff.
Yeah, it's just really funny that's the most like concise praise we can give it. Several cutscenes will play in sequence.
Hey, if the cutscenes are good.
Yep. God.
Anyway, like that's a huge amount of systems talk. And we have outlined the like scenario, right? There's this virtual world called Redo because it's the second one after the one that was in the first game called Mobius.
No, it's called Redo because it's for people who want to redo their life. It's not because it's.
I think it's a cheeky joke on the part of the writer. I mean, it's like textually they're not calling it Redo because they're redoing the first one, but I mean they are. It's a sequel.
Yeah. And you're trying to defeat the rulers of Redo, which is the Vocaloid Regret and her like inner coterie of musicians who are like the vocal OPs. And there are 8 of them, and they're the like bosses of each of the levels.
Mm-hmm.
And you go level by level, and you figure out what their deal or their plot is, and you fight them, and then you gain power, and you go on to the next level.
Yep.
Eventually you confront Regret and you win. And along the way, you have a relationship stat with each of the party members, and as that increases, there's a little side story that you can follow for that character. And that's where most of the party member character development happens, which does have this problem, which I mentioned earlier, that if you're designing a system like that, you have a choice. Either you write it so that the character growth only happens in the side story, not in the main story. Which then, if a player does all the side stories, you get to the end of the game and they're like, well, why have these characters regressed back to how they were at the start of the game? Or you fold all the character growth back into the main story, and you have players who are wondering, why do these characters feel so different at the end of the game from the beginning? Because they haven't done the side stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Caligula solved that problem. I've certainly seen worse examples.
I think I've said this before. I think the only way to solve this is with more variations on like writing endings, which is not something that a lot of games are willing to do, because it's more writing, it's more recording time, it's more programming to get those to work, it's more QA to make sure they don't fuck up and show you the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's more game development for the sake of the same amount of player experience, basically.
Which is hard to sell to corporate.
I felt some of the strangest in how the main story, like, I think the main story kept on this like train of ambivalence, and they would kind of hold stuff to their chest for some reason, like leaving that open.
Did you two both complete all the character stories?
I did them all. Yeah. I don't think I want the game without them though. I like how the game has basically these individual twine-like stories, like sort of removed from the rest of the game, and then you come back and put that in the game. I kind of like. I don't know why I like it so much. Exactly, so, I haven't figured it out.
I only completed, I think, 5 stories: Gin, Dasara, Kiriko, Nico, and Marie.
So Gin and the gals,
basically.
Yeah.
Like, and yes, that's very revealing about me, I know, but like, there were definitely moments in the final sequence where Kobato and Shota and Ryuto were speaking from things that were revealed in those side stories that I didn't know.
They were.
And that was a weird experience. Because I didn't feel that there were middle states represented through the middle of the game where they might have been in the middle of the stories was represented at all. Like, it felt like they went from behaving in the main story as if they were at the start of their character arcs to behaving in the main story as if they were at the end of the character arcs, without much sense of how they got from one to the other.
I think Kobatsu actually has. The game fucking loves Kobatsu, by the way, but
it so badly does.
I think Kobatsu has the most sense of that. If you his character story unlocks the most gradually, and each time you do it, he kind of softens. I actually feel like they there is that midpoint if you're sort of playing it in this expected way. It is kind of a mess of systems though.
I think,
but for Ryuto and Shota, they just have like these grand personal revelations, and they're different. Which honestly, though, that sounds like them, so whatever.
Yeah, the thing with Kobato too is that he is the one who has the most ways that he can just shut you down. Like, he has like 7 out of his 9 like chapters. There is a wrong answer that will block you from progressing or something like that, and it's just like,
Jesus.
Yeah, like as soon as he's in the Go Home Club, and you can start having regular social links with him. All of them are like the pink color that are just like, yeah, he might lock you out.
Because, yeah. It's at rank 3. You get asked if you want to dive into his heart, rather than at like rank 6 or 8.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Also comes in late because his stuff has to deal with the first game, and my joke about I also suffered through Caligula 1 was appropriate because, like, he was part of the school body in Caligula 1, and he got caught up in Caligula 2. And I think part of the game's, like, love for Kobato, which I'm not going to deny, is, like, trying to grapple with the sort of shit that Caligula 1 dealt with. And it's a little bit like having a member of Caligula 1's party in your party in Caligula 2 for me, because really, all them fuckers are mean and bad.
Yeah, like, Kobito's demeanor in this game is like he's the fuckboy, right? He's the one who is always hitting on the girls and talks as if he can only think of girls as people to hit on, which I find so profoundly off-putting whenever it crops up. And he just does not shut up about that in this game. And that's why I didn't do his social link.
As someone who has been Kobato before, no matter what Becky says, yeah, it sucks, he sucks, but he still deserves a little empathy, and I think that the social link for him does at least try to land that well enough that I didn't find it terrible.
Yeah, the nose tweaking is that this is like Kobato's idea of what he missed out on, and it's obviously terrible. Like no one in the game really supports him in it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the game focuses on him a lot, probably I feel like it's just like a point of identification for the author. I'm just doing a call out now.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's necessary. I think that's just it. Like it was just like more comfortable to write Kobato.
He does kind of feel like, you know, he's a shonen archetype, and in being that shonen archetype, he is in part a standing image of like Japanese boyhood.
Yeah,
it's got huge cultural prevalence.
But I think like
schoolboys are like.
I think like with his whole character story and the nose tweak, he's still kind of interesting to me because he's also performating. He's just like a different spectrum of performative masculinity. A lot of these characters are struggling with like the performances and how they're supposed to measure up because he's not. He's bad at this in Redo, which is a simulation, and he's never done it before in real life either. So yeah,
and like from a like philosophical thought experiment standpoint, the really interesting thing about Redo as a world is that the characters make very clear it's not just that Redo allows them to, you know, live the childhood that they dreamed of living rather than the life that they've actually had, but also when they enter Redo, they get a kind of personality overlay. You know, several of the characters, you know, they don't say, I'm not like this in real life necessarily, but the way they explain their real life to you, it's clear that part of the process of entering this virtual world, it's not, you don't bring your full self to the virtual world. The virtual world imposes a way of a kind of character on you, which goes as deep as like your motivations and your emotional responses. And the game doesn't make a huge amount of hay out of that as a pure philosophical issue, which I think is the right choice, but it's one step more imaginative in allowing that possibility than most of the most games that would play with this idea of, well, you're in a virtual world now, because it's so hard to imagine. Like most of that kind of Western imagining of what if we live in a computer simulation is too kind of neurotic about the integrity of the self.
Yeah,
and it was refreshing to have a game that
or even I will even not just leave that Western thought. In isekais, it becomes like a domination thing, right? Where it's like, where is the endpoint of the simulation? How can I roll over this? How can I conquer this now that it's new and fresh?
Yeah. So that's like a cool background detail, is this fact that, for example, Nico in her story, she tells you, in real life, I'm not like this, but my fantasy in Redo, that Redo is here to like enable me to live, is not just to have a certain role, but to be a certain kind of person.
Or there's Gen's story, which had me break down crying, where he reveals that he's now having a different form of dysphoria, and I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah,
that interplay is really heavy with that philosophical stuff you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, Gin's story is probably the standout from the game in terms of like, this really fucking works.
Yeah.
I have more to say on that later. But the where was I going with this? Dol distracted me by the comment. Lots to unpack with regard to living in cultures built on land-based colonial expansion that suddenly ran out of land to colonize it, which is an argument I've been making for a while that video games are the simulation of unconquered territory, and that explains a lot of why gamers care about things like realism and difficulty and excluding other people from conquest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it
now that
matters
you bring that up, though, it's really interesting how much like Caligula refuses that. It's like, you know,
yeah,
you have to accept we're out of space. You know, it's over. You need to deal with what we have.
Yeah, and even that, like, that is actually a really funny thing to bring up, because with this, you are only in social spaces also already populated by humans. You are never going to like explore somewhere actually new in Caligula, because it's all part of, you know, civilization, people.
The fantasy is a fantasy of work. Actually, it blew my mind when Kiriko was like, okay, I gotta go do my part-time job. Because the first game didn't have that sort of complete simulation. It was like, you can work if you want to, but no one's working and everyone's in high school. It's just kind of like this like very pointed otaku fever dream. But then Caligula 2 is more like, no, this is just like a small scale late capitalism bubble.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Caligula is in a way a teenage version of the every millennial's life dream now is just to like own a house.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all we want is to participate in the middle class society that our parents had access to. You know, and the characters can't imagine, like, if we take Redo to be a gestalt of like a whole bunch of people's kind of ideal fantasy worlds, that gestalt is really lacking in imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's just like, here's all the things you're promised. They're actually happening. They're actually working.
Yeah. This system is kind of fair. Which gets really interesting when it gets to dealing with the topic of disabled characters, but I'll say more about that later.
Yeah. So, like, there are always people around. You're never going to be, like, colonizing new space. Like, it's not like Tales of Vesperia, where it's like, oh, I'm going to explore the entire world and make a map. This is going to be valuable to me. I'm going to be, you know, like, this means something. Here it's all like, we're exploring spaces that already exist for reasons that, you know, might not align with their normal use, but it's... We're exploring human spaces.
Most of the time when you're doing actual like exploration gameplay, it's for side quests, and it's about like tracking down someone to check that they aren't cheating on their girlfriend or something like that.
Or just doing their homework.
Yeah.
I'll say honestly, I wish I liked the side stuff, but it felt like it just wasn't loved on as much.
I think I like the structure of the side quests. I feel a bit with the side quests in this the way I felt about the side quests in Xenoblade 1. Like, the actual quests are not massively interesting, but the way that the structure has all these complicated interlinks where, you know, lots of the quests are get this item that is a reward from another quest, or and there's a whole kind of interlocking structure of when it's actually possible to do things.
Yeah, that's a good point. The casualty link thing in general was a very great idea.
Yeah,
that I don't think has borne fruit in any of the Caligula games. But it did in Xenoblade 3, so...
yeah, it's the affinity chart. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the only time you explore a space that isn't populated by people is when you're exploring the end of the fucking Matrix in the final dungeon, which was established by people who had control and wanted their own space to colonize. So it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
That is true. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. At all points when you are doing dungeon exploration, there are, like, people around.
Named
because
people,
these are...
like, even...
Sorry?
Named people, even. People who, like, matter, quote-unquote, to the, like, affinity chart. Like, it's...
Yeah, like, there are side quest NPCs, there are... And, you know, you can be making your first pass through a dungeon, and you can encounter new whole side quest chains. And even do chunks of those side quests, depending on what you've managed to find and what you might have missed along the way. Yeah, I mean, the side quests are not terribly deep. There was one that was deep enough that I got really angry about it, which was the rancid one where you find that
Is it the
there's a
student
girl.
with the teacher?
Yeah, there's a student who is going to accuse a teacher of sexually assaulting her, and it is revealed that this is a lie, and she was put up to it by her friend, so that her friend could step in and convince the first girl to stop lying as a way of ingratiating herself with the teacher, because she's the one who actually has the crush on the teacher. Which, like, this is just a lousy set of writing choices.
Yeah, it felt like a TV B plot. I don't know. It doesn't really fit in with the rest of the game either.
I mean, it doesn't massively, but it does fit in with like a prevailing misogynistic attitude to complaints about sexual assault in school contexts. It's disappointing when a game which can at times be genuinely like empathetic and sophisticated in its understanding of how people live does something so tone deaf. And it's not the only instance like that, unfortunately. Equally, some of the side quests are just nice side quest type stories. The one where you meet a popular girl and she's clearly not happy in her relationship, and over the course of the quest you realize that there's a kind of dweeby, unassuming boy, and she kind of changes her mind and thinks that maybe he's all right, and then they get together. Like, that could be tropey and flat, but it's written well enough that it kind of works. You know,
the tone actually reminded me of the Yakuza side stories, and I gotta say those are just a lot better.
Yeah, I think like if they had maybe a different set of people working on the side quests writing, it would be I would be overjoyed to play through all the things. I did all the side quests, except for the one where you have to be level 60. I've done all the quests in the game. Yeah, it's just really uneven. Like, there's a guy who gets popular because he's hot, but he only talks, likes to talk to the roses at the flower garden, the botanical garden, and he gets a
that one was
fucking
kind of funny.
It was, and it ended with such a fucking dumb punchline that I was just like, okay, this is good, but also, what the fuck is happening? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It just feels so divorced from reality of the game. To me, they felt really obligatory. Like, well, of course, there has to be like a multi-chain, Rockstar style side quest in the RPG, and I'm just like, yeah, I guess.
It really doesn't add anything to the idea of this being like, this is people's dream kind of environment. Like, those characters don't feel like they're in their dream environment. They feel like they're in their everyday lives.
It adds vermicitude, I guess, but I still don't care for him.
Yeah. Should I put up the spoiler warning tag? Should we talk about the plot?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go there next.
Okay, spoilers being discussed. If you don't want to, well, here we can have a little thing where, like, if anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled wants to ask any questions that we should get to before the spoilers happen, so you don't need to like wait for another half hour to get your questions out. Feel free to drop them in the chat.
Half an hour, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know. I was being generous. But yeah, if anyone in the chat has any questions they want asked right now, feel free.
I feel like this is not a game that particularly suffers if you know what's coming. Like, there aren't a lot of like vast world-changing revelations, and the handful that arguably are kind of fall flat anyway.
Yeah,
it's not a game whose strength is its twists.
Yeah, I think all of us are fine in saying spoilers aren't really gonna make this game weaker. And a lot of the fun is playing the game yourself anyway, because the mechanics are fun. But yeah, we will be discussing the plot. And I'm gonna be
we'll be discussing Bluffman's reality marble. I just wanted to say that.
Yes.
I want to say those 3 words.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah, you would want to say those 3 words.
Motherfucking Gilgamesh-looking motherfucker.
I lost my mind when I forget his name though, but it was Dio-Seiyu. I was like, yes.
Yes, exactly.
But it was. I mean, honestly, the potential was a little wasted, but whatever.
Yeah, I feel like if they wanted to have him be more of like an actual threat instead of like, you know, kind of just like a chump at the end, they could have made it not 8 chapters or had him show up more often and be like a recurring threat directly.
I was debating on bringing this up, but I actually think the pacing in Caligula 1, whether or not the plot is good, just the pacing, where all of Thorn's reveal happen on the tower before the final dungeon, that's actually normal. That's actually how you do it. So I was kind of confused about Caligula 2's approach, because the pacing is usually generally much better, except at the end I kind of fell off of it.
Yeah, like I said at one point, unless they really botch something in the 11th hour, like it's probably going to be a very good game. And they kind of did, but it didn't like flop hard enough for me to say it's not a good game. Like it's just kind of like, okay, they kind of stumbled over the finish line. This is fine, I guess.
Like it pulls a bunch of things it thinks are cool twists right at the end, but they hit too late and too suddenly to really work as such.
They feel very there's like a classical Japanese literary sense, in my opinion, where the point is, I wouldn't think of them as twists, really. In my opinion, it's like a recontextualization. It's like, here's another lens to look at the story. Now, I just don't think the lenses are very good.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. All right, so there are a couple of reasons why one might want to play Caligula 1 before playing this game. I don't think that they stand up to scrutiny very much. One of the twists is that one of your party members, who is also like the crux of the entire simulation, is a villain from the first game.
Wicked Dan.
Yeah. It's
I loved Wicked's redesign though. I'll just say that.
Yeah. God. I don't even know where to start with all the spoiler talk. Becky, you have things to ramble about. Please do.
Okay, so I'm not sure it makes sense for me to do this, because like what I have is an assessment of the question of representational ethics in this game. Okay, so simplifying a bit, the question of, is this a problematic game or not? And the reason that I have so much material on this is like my area of professional expertise. Like I teach a course about this at university level, very, very squarely on this. And if I was still doing academic published research, this is what I would be doing.
So the game is very generative, as they say in academia.
Oh god, it's so different now that you've been to college.
I don't remember all the buzzwords anymore, but that one will never leave me.
God. So, in terms of like very outline plot summary, there's these 8 musicians, and each of them tries in their own way to like interfere with you. They actually have a pretty diverse set of motivations and goals in doing so. They're not like unified, which I really like.
Yeah, and that ends up being commented on. Anyway, yes.
I have a question.
Go on.
Did the musicians have swag?
Is Becky the right person to ask this question?
I just want input. I'm not discriminating.
I mean,
I don't think all of them have swag.
That's the right answer.
Like, Mukun definitely doesn't have swag.
Well, that's intentional, though.
That is intentional.
Regrettably,
I'm going to argue.
I think Bluffman does, but not in a way that he can actually use.
Pandora has swag.
When I was at the end of the game, I was like, God damn it, none of the villains have swag. And then I was like, never mind, Bluffman has swag.
Yeah, but
Pandora has swag.
he's a fucking single dad. He does not have any actual swag. Like,
No, he's a very cursed individual.
Yeah. Like the iconicity around the villains is really interesting because in a way they all look like they're trying to look like villains. You know, they're all very like self-consciously aesthetic kind of people, one way or another.
Although their aesthetics will fall apart the moment they get pushed back. It's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, it's a very thin brand that they're all maintaining.
Yeah. Kudan with her like faux military goth thing. That's just really unfortunate.
Okay, wait, another vibes check. Is Kudan supposed to be like student movement socialist or fascist? I could not tell.
She looks fascist to me.
Oh, that was your vibe check.
Like those are iron crosses on her jacket.
Did I just completely miss that?
I think so. I might be wrong, but like I was looking at them, I was never quite confident enough to say, "Fuck, is she wearing iron crosses?"
I was looking at a ton of old Baathist uniforms. That would be nonsense. I don't want to clarify for anyone else. And then I was comparing them to her, and I was like, "Huh, you know." But I couldn't. And in the end, it's really vague. She's just like political extremism meme.
More than anything, she looks like a bunch of people I knew as a teen who were Manic Street Preachers fans, who had a very confused array of symbols on their jackets.
That sound, yeah.
But she also looks a bit Girls and Panzer. It's an unfortunate set of like landmarks, right?
Holy shit.
That, particularly in a Japanese context, I think I'm like
a little sketched out by.
Yeah,
she was sussy, right? That's why I asked.
Yeah. I think that is intentional, right? That she's supposed to have a little bit of a vibe of this is a punk playing with symbols that she's kind of relying on nobody else understanding better than her. And like it works because she also clearly doesn't have, like, in a way she seems like the least motivated character.
Yeah. The thing is,
what was her deal? She's just like loyal.
She's like an inverse of Bluffman. She has like this strong filial responsibility to her father. But like the game, the game really flexes its ambiguity at that point and just never really explains it.
Yeah, like she was going to like use her power to help her politician father because politics, and she's like,
oh, that's right. Yeah, she wanted the power of like creating virtual worlds.
No, she wanted the power of mind control for regret.
That's right. She wanted the power of mind control to take it outside of the virtual world so that she could get her politician father elected with like the power of Vocaloid.
Yep. Notably, though, she didn't have any ideology herself. It was just like, I gotta do this for my dad.
At the same time, you know her dad's in the NDP, right? Absolutely unequivocally, her dad is probably in one of the more like militarist factions of the NDP.
Yeah, it could be Nippon Kaigi or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be full Nippon Kaigi, but they're like generally the right side of Japan's already pretty right-wing major political party. You know, there's no sense that she's got like an agenda for reform. She's not talking about how her dad is going to resist militarism and then like reinvest in the people and so on. Yeah, her dad's probably a law and order candidate of some sort. And that to me is where the aesthetic does its work, where her look does its work. Regrettably, because she looks like a lot of people that I had crushes on as a teenager, I think she's incredibly hot.
Yeah.
But I feel bad about that. God. But yeah, like Mohop says in chat, she's not of the new left generation, definitely. And when I say she looks a bit Girls and Panzer, what I mean is she looks a bit like me trying to imagine like the ethos of the Girls and Panzer like creative team. It's like, how do you end up making that anime? That's how you end up being a vocal OP who dresses like Kudan.
Her like will to power shtick is also like, I don't know, she just comes from older ideas of what politics is. So yeah, definitely not new left. She's not even neo-reactionary either. She's just like,
she says I didn't actually look it up, but she has a bunch of lines that appear to be quotes, and I would bet that a bunch of them are from Nietzsche.
Yeah,
right. She's
probably happened at least once.
And like the Nietzsche famously was translated into Japanese pretty early relative to other like 19th and 20th century Western philosophers, and has been very influential.
I read a review of
again at
Evangelon from the 90s that quotes Nietzsche like extensively. So
God,
yeah,
that's just random anecdote, but yeah.
Anyway, I just want to say that she's 21 and in college, so of course she's into Nietzsche.
Poor baby.
Shut the fuck up. I was never into Nietzsche. I'm a Sartre kid.
This is why you're tolerable now.
Maybe. It's why I'm a socialist now and not a proto-fascist. Nietzsche was not a proto-fascist. That's not a fair reading, etc., etc., etc. We talked through that at some
Disclaimer,
point.
We're fucking not going into this again. We get it.
Yeah. So
it's not LGC unless we are defending Hegel or Nietzsche, right?
Defending is a very strong word.
Bringing up, rehashing, reinterpreting these some very important and essential legacies.
I mean, it's really, really hard to be Marxist critics without at least a little bit of Hegel getting in there, okay?
Yeah, no, it comes up. It will just come up even if you don't want it to.
Like the blood out of the ground in Pathologic.
Yeah.
So yeah, like here's what I think we should do. We should run down I'm gonna stab you. The Nietzsche strikes again. He puts in chat. Fuck you. I think what we should do is we should run down each of the characters and each of the musicians quickly.
Okay, I have a list.
It's not really like a plot. There's two things that happen in the plot. One is you find out about Marie's deal, and then the other is you confront regret at the end, and the rest is all like, here's this character's deal, here's this character's deal.
Slowly working your way up the ladder of threats. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is episodic.
Yeah. The main character is like undefined, basically.
Okay, I want to talk about this real quick. The fucking in the first game, so like in these games, every party member has like a counterpart on the villain side that like they're a foil to. In the first game, the fucking first dude you deal with is the foil to the protagonist for some reason. It's so fucking janky. I don't know why. Kensuke is like that.
God.
But yeah, no, like it's an interesting idea. But I don't know that they really do a lot with that, to be honest. Yeah, the okay. Player character. There's discussions going on in chat. So we start out with the player character. They shortly recruit Gin Noto. And then later, wow, this is ordered really funny. It's all the dudes, then all the gals. So I remember the order. So they recruit Gin Noto, then they recruit Sasara Amiki, then they recruit it's Shota and no, it's Kiriko, then Shota. And then they get Ryuto, Marie, Kobato, and Nico.
Okay.
All of those have trauma because yay, video games. Where would we be without trauma? Okay. And also, okay, the bad guys. In the order you fight them, which is not okay. They is ordered in really funny ways. Thank you, Wiki. Machina, which is a younger kid who doesn't handle the idea of death well. Pandora, who hates idols. Mukun, who is an astronaut and imposter syndrome motherfucker. He wants to be an astronaut, I guess. There's Cupid, who wants a partner. That's it.
Yeah, it's like she is using the virtual world entirely as a matchmaking service.
Yep.
And is otherwise completely mercenary. Like, she's cool, actually, honestly. But is completely mercenary about which side she's on.
Yeah, I liked most of the time. I'm not super up on like fond of like player sexual characters, but like she is aggressively gay. Like,
it's great.
Big fan of that.
She is so keen on you.
Yeah, and she's just like, I'm not going to give you the whole spiel. I just like you.
Yeah.
Then there's Doctor and Cranky, who are German name things and have a eugenics thing going on, which is rough.
More on them later.
Yep. And then Kudan, who is the Girls in Panzer, and then Bluffman, who is the mastermind.
Yes. So, Gin, let's start there. Gin, so when you meet Gin, he's a kind of happy-go-lucky schoolboy, a little bit reserved. Like, he wears a cap all the time, so his face is a little bit shaded, but generally friendly, first-party member. As you work through his character story, you realize that all is not well with his gender.
And also, like, even when you're like just like for a lot of the early game, it's like just you, Gin, and Sasura. And there are a lot of comments that Gin makes that like people who are cis will not key into. But yeah, the rest of us were like, this boy's got a lot of gender in there. What's going on, bud?
Yeah. And also, so the characters transform slightly when they go into combat. They have like the catharsis effect mode. And Gin's transformation is that the bottom of his trousers get ragged, and under them he's wearing not like sneakers, but femme-heeled shoes. Which, it has to be said, fucking a look.
Yeah.
Boy can rock them heels. But it's also like, it's another one of those little hints. And a thing that I really like is that the game at no point prods at this in a fun-making way. There's never a scene where any other character's like, oh, you're wearing them girl heels in combat, what's up with that, or anything. Which, you know, it shouldn't be a pleasant surprise.
Yeah,
but also it is.
Yeah. Also, a thing that I just want to bring up, because you mentioned the cap. I have lost count of the number of things. It's such a trope. I've lost count of the number of times I've seen like fucking anime or visual novels or manga where like the protagonist like knew a kid when they were young that was always wearing a cap, and they thought they were a boy, but it's a girl when they come back later in the story. And that, I feel like that trope is at least some part why he's wearing a fucking cap all the time.
Yeah. I wear a cap most of the time. It's convenient when you're trans to be able to like cover the shape of your head in various ways.
My head is too big for that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Also, your hair is just like
chaos.
Enormous, frankly. My hair is enormous as well, but I wear it longer than yours, so it lies flat on top. Anyway, what you learn, Gin eventually reveals in his side story that in the real world, he was assigned female at birth and presents femme, and is closeted, basically. Like, is uncomfortable with presenting femme, but does so to appease and to stay in the good graces of all the people around him. And his redo fantasy is getting to live his life, and particularly his childhood, as a boy. But this has also not brought him peace. He's not actually fully comfortable being a boy either, and the ultimate decision, and I don't think there's a scene where like he says, okay, I'm going to identify as genderqueer now, but the resolution of his story is for the main character to say, look, you should treat gendered expression as a buffet. You should like pick and choose which gendered expressions you want and what you want to do and how you want to live your life. You should not have to conform to either mode. And it's really well done. Like,
yes. It made me cry.
Made you cry, made Leroy cry. It didn't quite make me cry, but it almost
You were also
did.
screaming.
Yeah, and even I like teared up.
Yeah, like
it's really well done.
Especially because like the scene right before that with Gin is Gin like going, I don't like want to make you uncomfortable or like lose your friendship, but like this is gonna have to be dealt with at some point, and I don't know what to do about it. And then you come back and your weirdo little body mate is just like, I did some reading. It turns out this is normal. It's fine. We love you.
Yeah. So I realized that we need to rewind and explain who Key is. Because we haven't done that. So Key is the daughter of the Vocaloid from the first game. And she has infiltrated Redo.
Yes.
I think to like, because she's angry at Regret, the Vocaloid who has control of Redo, for doing the whole trapping people in a virtual world thing over again.
Yeah.
And she takes up residence in the main character's body, which is why you're the main character. Because you're the first person she encounters who remembers what their life is like outside the simulation. And so, but she is a Virtua doll, as they're called in the game, which is like they're AI creatures. They don't have detailed understandings of what human beings are like, and they're trying to learn about human beings. And so her initial response to Gin's uncertainty about gender is not necessarily hostile, but she's weirded out by it. And then she goes away and she does some reading, and she comes back and she's much more understanding. And she's the one who offers explicitly the terms agender and genderqueer. And we said this at the time, but it feels a little bit like there's a degree of author self-insert there, of like the author is saying, so after the trans stuff in the first game, I went away and did some of the reading, and I realized that I needed to have a more sophisticated understanding.
Note, the scenario writer for the first game was a fucking Tadashi Satomi, who is most known for Persona 1 and 2, and was not working on the second game due to scheduling conflicts. So, and God, the transphobia in there was just like rancid.
Yeah.
So, I have their creative process was actually revealed in an interview. I have friends who really love these games, so I know this stuff. But the first game story was drafted still by the director-author, and the Persona author came in to do rewrites and suggestions. So it was most definitely a collaborative work. So I think Becky's read is probably right.
But yeah, I think they did better without the Persona writer. I think just stay away from this one, please.
Yeah. And it's not even Hoshino, who is also a twat about gender diversity. So that's Gin. There's Sasura, who is like, she's already kind of a mom type in in the virtual world. She's also like kind of technophobic. She doesn't really know her way around technology. And what you find out about her is that in real life she's very old. She's in her 80s. And she knows she doesn't have long left to live, and her fantasy is to get to be a child again. To be young again, and to like have all the vitality of a child and so on. And the way that manifests is she's one of the tanks of the team, and you're constantly scolding her for putting herself in harm's way for others because she holds her life very cheaply because it's nearly over. And you're trying to get her to like place more value on her life, and reject the idea that just because she's old, her life is worth less than yours. Who's up next? Is it Shota and Kiriko next?
Kiriko, then Shota, yeah.
So Kiriko is kind of the like Yankee or delinquent type when you first encounter her. But as the story progresses, it becomes clear that she's actually a very caring person and a very reliable person. And I have to admit, I don't really remember what the reveal is with Kiriko.
She's an idol. She used to be an idol?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she used to be a pretty popular idol, and she burnt out and she wanted to quit and kind of wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
Couldn't because her fans were too obsessive.
Which is a thing that happens to Regret also at the end.
Yes.
I think the text is like, she quits, but like the state of quitting isn't really what she expected because she's still followed by paparazzi and she still has this expectations of performing even when she's not an idol anymore, and that just really frustrated her.
Yeah, and that's why her foil among the musicians is Pandora, who is an anti for idols, like who hates idols, because
I mean, specifically, she's a fucking anti for Kiriko because Kiriko, not Kirito, even though she does have a sword. Anyway, Kiriko was like in a movie with a male idol that she was into.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So she like Pandora is like a parasocial fan, basically, like I don't really know what Pandora wants out of Redo either.
I mean, she doesn't. That's the thing. Like she fucks off.
She's not very strongly aligned with the other musicians at all. She's just sort of there.
Yeah.
I mean, the musician thing's kind of ambiguous too because Bluffman just is like, okay, I have this idea. Do you want in on it? And so they don't. You see this most with Regret, but you get a sense that the musicians don't even know what they're really signing up for, and then they're just there.
I'm going to say something. I don't know how it will be taken. Bluffman is kind of like the owner of one of those old webcomic sites where you could go and host all your shit, but not one of the good ones. Just like there's no quality control. Yeah, it's just like a web ring, and just like there are people here, except it's a virtual world that is like making people comatose from the real world.
A sus creepy Discord mod.
Yes,
in more modern kind of frame of reference. So yeah, like that's Kiriko.
Yeah. Also, we didn't know before that Sasara's counterpart is Makina, who is very young and afraid of death, instead of her being very old and not afraid of death. Not afraid of death enough. Also, you hit Makina with a train in the first chapter. That was pretty cool.
It's pretty good. It's goofy, but it's pretty good. Like this game doesn't have a lot of like fully animated cutscenes in the sense of like they've taken it out of the regular walk around engine and specifically rigged the models, but most of the ones that it has are pretty good.
Yeah, or they're the go live.
Go live.
That's the one. Anyway,
Key's voice actress does great work.
Yep. Yeah, when people awaken, they usually get a full cutscene for it.
Yeah. Okay, so Kiriko, when you first meet her, is kind of the delinquent, and you meet her arguing with Shota, who is is he a school council or a discipline council?
Discipline.
Yeah, and he's super stuffy and officious, and he wants everybody to abide by the letter of all the laws. And he just hassles people constantly if they're not towing the line. And I didn't do his full story, but it starts out with you learning that he's actually very, very indecisive when he doesn't have laws to rely on. Like he can't even choose what he wants to drink from the vending machine, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what's the reveal with him?
The reveal is that because it turns out he was a cop, and I know how we all feel about cops, but as a fixture of the story, he was a good cop, quote unquote, except he got into a situation where there was a hostage being taken. He impulsively and instinctively, instead of following the rules, he fired a shot, nearly shot the kid that he was trying to rescue, and killed the hostage taker instead. And that left him with trauma around I nearly fucking killed that kid. I don't care if I saved him, I nearly killed him. I can't deal with this. I really wish I could go back and follow all the rules so that I didn't put myself in this situation.
Yeah. And that results in him trying to force people to follow the rules. Who's his foil?
His foil would be Kranka, I think. Let me double check. He's the one who has the most.
No, his foil is Cranker because he Cranker is a student at the school, and he's the one she's in his class or something, and she's a wheelchair user, and sometimes he pushes her wheelchair.
Yeah.
And does he also know her IRL?
No.
Because he talks about her with a degree of fondness and familiarity that the others don't have.
Yeah.
He knows about her situation.
Also something that we haven't brought up is that every character has an associated flower that has meanings in the language of flowers, which is a Japanese thing that comes up a fair bit. And each of these characters has an associated flower that says something about their character, and it's just okay.
Which, yeah, I figured there was probably something like that, because the flower imagery is pretty, clear.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know the language of flowers, so I haven't got a clue what any of it's supposed to say.
Yeah, there's it's listed on the wiki if you get really curious.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Kiriko and Shota, and Pandora and Cranker. Then we get Marie
and Ryuto.
Marie and Ryuto. Ryuto's foil is Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't Marie's foil also Cranker?
Parallel is Bluffman.
I think
right.
I thought Marie's was. Well, I guess maybe.
Because they're the game very explicitly makes analogies between Maria and Cranker.
Yeah.
Not least that Cranker's IRL name is.
I'm going to just interrupt you for a second. I opened up Marie's page. Let me read you the flower language of Marie. Marie's flower is the snowdrop, and it represents hope in the Japanese flower language. However, in some cases, giving the flowers a gift can be taken to represent, I hope for your death.
Jesus Christ! Fucking hell! Given what we're about to explain about Marie, that's horrifying.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I wondered if Marie's parallel was regret, maybe. But I don't know.
It's listed as Bluffman, but yeah.
It's the least. Oh, really? That's
Yeah, I don't know.
In the wiki.
Yeah.
Thank you, wiki.
Yeah.
Thank you, wiki.
And not all of the paralleling relationships are massively important. Like Pandora and Kiriko, it's really important that they're parallel. Everything around Cranker gets quite muddled because there is also this business of the explicit analogy that the game makes between Cranker and Marie. And Bluffman doesn't talk enough that having a foil relationship with Bluffman would be particularly deep.
Oh,
I'm thinking about it some more. So the game doesn't tell you Marie's backstory, but she has an abusive household, and it's and in fairness, the first Caligula never goes into the details, which I appreciated. It doesn't get sordid about it. She just says it matter of factly. So you don't know how bad it is, but from context, you assume bad. You assume really bad.
Yeah.
And then Bluffman is just like abusive dad. So there's a little bit of
We skipped over Mu-kun, who is Gin's foil.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I kind of like Mu-kun is early enough in the game and recurs too little for me to really have much memory of him. Like, he's very annoying. He's an artist. I actually quite liked some of his art pieces, but they are super garish and like
It's Jeff Koons style.
Mm.
Right? I don't know, that's what I thought.
You'd probably know better than me. But it's like bright colors, weird combinations of shapes, very, very abstract art. And it's talked about in the way that people talk derisively about modern art. And I when I got through that section on my stream, I was pushing back on that a bit.
I thought it was, maybe I just gave it too much credit, but I thought it was literate enough that it wasn't just that it was modern art, but it was that, Mu-kun's expression was honestly pretty shallow. It's the kind of, but this is still common in the art world. It's the kind of art that it's like this very ironic biography of the artist, and so then the artist is just kind of, they become a brand. And honestly, they're not so much different from a pop star, which I guess the game is kind of saying.
I think that is a useful way of thinking about it. I think that's what Mu-kun is like trying to do, right? Is to be a brand as an artist. Like his idea of success as an artist is not so much about the art itself as it is about.
He'd get into NFTs. I'll just say it.
Fuck, would he ever get into NFTs? Yeah, extremely.
Like
he would series of his own NFTs.
He would be the dude. He would be Beeple. He would have sold all of his shit for like so much money, and then been like, "Yep, I'm a successful artist."
Yeah.
Also, I just keep looking through this wiki because there was a cafe collaboration for every character, and they had a drink, and Gin's is a pineapple flavored drink with a blue boba. That rules.
Wow.
Put that in the back.
So okay, yeah, there's Mu-kun. That does look very, very colourful. Let's see. So Marie. When you meet Marie, she is a kind of ideal class president type. Like she's demure and proper, but friendly and caring, and everybody likes her, and she's very diligent, but she is kind of bland.
He feels like the NPC more than Kopatsu.
Sorry, say again.
I was saying she kind of gives off NPC vibes more than Kopatsu.
Like when I first met her, I was like, she's got an individual character portrait, like she's going to be a playable character, but she doesn't really feel like a playable character. I wonder if they just had to have like a character who's going to be the class president, who is just enough of a character to qualify for a portrait, but not going to be like a party member or a villain.
Yeah,
like an Ots visual novel where you just like meet your classmates. They're not going to show up again, but we drew CGs for them.
Yeah. Yeah, my mentality on that was like, it's weird if I can have if I can have a character episode with her, she's probably gonna be at the party, but like there's something going on here.
Yeah. And like this one's going to be more complicated than explaining most of the other characters because it's like important for the general story. So things you learn about her, she is disabled in real life. She's do we know for sure that she's paraplegic?
Yep, paraplegic was a word. Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember. So she's paraplegic. She doesn't have the use of her legs. She's in a wheelchair. She's also she's also the virtual world from which Redo was kind of extrapolated was originally created for her by the Vocaloid from the first game, specifically so that she would have a world where she could like not be disabled. That's what you get in this game basically, and then the characters realize that means they could kill Marie. And
wait! I just asked for clarification because I think I missed something. I thought she was also like in a coma. Did I just put that in there to make myself feel better?
I half remembered something along those lines.
Because I feel like the prospects for that her prospects of recovery were low. She was in a coma, hospitalized, and yeah, she's paraplegic now.
She was hospitalized after a fall at a school. She's paraplegic now, in a coma, and also got put into spinal cord Mobius
with a spinal cord injury, and yeah, she had the astral syndrome.
So yeah, the thing about the time spent in the first game, which we find out about from Kobato, is that he, like all the people who are in Mobius, the first game's virtual world, like they were in a coma and they were like not like they didn't do very well because they were in a coma for however long it took to solve that problem. And it fucked up Kobato that pretty badly. And then he got stuck in this hell again. And someone who was already in the hospital when they got pulled into the coma and then kept going through the new Redo coma. Like, because it's after the first game, it's implied that this Micro Mobius existed for her until it was made into Redo. So, like, she's been in a coma the entire time, like 3 years now.
Yeah.
So it's just like, she's not in a good way.
Yeah. And the other characters realize that they could kill Marie, and that would
Russo that just says it first. He just comes out and says it.
Yeah. And that would result in Redo shutting down. And there's this scene where you have to choose whether or not to kill Marie. I kill her in Redo, which would kill her IRL, I think, and then you'd all be free. And it's like this trolley problem thing of would you sacrifice one life? And it's a particularly pernicious version of the trolley problem, which does exist in the trolley problem literature of would you sacrifice one disabled person to save 5 healthy people, which is rancid to ask that question in that way, right? I have a deep dive on like this game's representation of disability.
I think that is absolutely fair. I'm also going to counterpoint that these are like people who are not usually put in positions to even have to think about this for hypotheticals, and they are desperate.
This is a choice. I think this is a choice also backed by its negative. The bad ending isn't. It's not really treated as a real ending. It doesn't get the same resolution as the other ending. When you do it, because I did it. The first thing I did was do it, of course. When you finally kill him, there's just a hard cut. There's no epilogue. You don't even know if it actually worked or anything. It's just like, blomp, you're done.
Yeah, like the game is clear that it's a bad ending. I am uncomfortable with them offering it to the player as a choice for reasons I'll talk about later. But the other component of Marie's story is this thing where she was one of the villains in the first game, right? So in the first game, when she was in the virtual world, she was one of the villains, and like,
not only was she one of the villains, but she's one of the two villains that sided with Thorn. So at the end of the first game, Thorn reveals, actually, this whole time I hijacked Mobius, and now I'm going to use Mobius to put everyone in a coma and destroy the real world. And the other musicians are like, what the fuck? This is not what he signed up for. But two of the musicians, which is Mireille and Wicked, are like, yeah, you know what? I'm okay with this. I'll still side with you.
Yeah, like what Caligula 2 establishes is that Wicked Marie is IRL is possessed of this sort of like destructive rage at the injustice of her circumstances. Like her unhappiness about her disability spills over into outwardly expressed hatred.
In the first game, it's actually it focuses more on the abuse part. The disability, it's not a retcon. It's just really not really talked about. Like her motivation in the first game is just injustice over the abuse.
Yeah,
and then it gets coupled for some reason in Caligula 2.
I mean, the second game barely, like, I didn't know there was any abuse going on.
Yeah, it's really unclear, but they still reference it in the hospital flashbacks, but they do it in a way. They do it in a way that's very literary, I guess, for some reason. I don't know what. On one hand, it's interesting that it's not text because, again, this is not a lurid depiction of abuse. But on the other hand, you can completely dismiss the text. But yeah, the father shows up in the hospital scene and says, "Why didn't you just fucking die?" That happens. Like that happens in Caligula 2.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Okay. So that's Marie. I think that covers Marie. Ryuto. Somebody tell me about Ryuto. So Ryuto in the virtual world is from the junior high school, so he's younger than the rest of them. And he's like the junior high school
Student
president.
Council, yeah.
Student council president, right? So he's very precocious.
It's the boy detective meme, and he shows up just for a ton of exposition dumps, convenient exposition dumps.
And to scold the other player characters for being such like layabouts and stuff.
Yeah. Honestly, his story isn't even that deep. He has like probably the least deep of all the characters.
Yeah, the entire thing is just like, oh my god, I'm so good. I literally don't know what to do because if I do one thing, I'll be wasting my talent on it and not another thing. I don't know what to do with my life.
He's also extremely rich, and he's conscious of that. The way he puts it is noblesse oblige, which is so fucking British.
How does it say anything about how old he is IRL?
He is 15 in Redo and 16 IRL. Or maybe 17.
He is 14 in Redo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it in the party. You get in the text conversations. They're like, yeah, I don't mind that Ryuto says that stuff because he's a kid, and that's just what kids do. Everyone knows that he's still a teenager.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. He very much is like an insufferable teenager. Like, I recognize prior stages of my life in Ryuto. It's part of why I hate him so much.
I did too, though. I was like, oh my god, no!
So that's Ryuto. Ryuto's file is
Doctor.
Is Doctor, right?
Yep.
So Doctor and Cranker, the musicians, who are Dr. Guji and Maria in real life. Yes, Maria, not Marie. I don't know what the game devs thought they were doing, giving those two characters the same name, except that they're clearly trying to set up an analogy between them. So IRL, Maria lost the use of her legs in a botched operation that was being carried out by Dr. Guji. And Dr. Guji's fantasy in Redo is kind of it's not just he's going to be the doctor who cures her. It's like he's the doctor who is like the head surgeon of the hospital and has all the resources at his disposal to focus on curing her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was clear to me, at least, that what he cares about is being a great doctor who can cure paraplegia, not really her well-being.
I didn't get that read. He seemed very romantically entangled with her, but he didn't want to. He had just like the I don't know, dramatic or melodramatic. Like, I will not become entangled with this patient, but I'll do everything for her. And the textual reoccurrence is that it's for her, because Ruto challenges him like, you're not acting like a doctor, you're not acting rational. He's like, I don't care about being a doctor anymore. I just care about her.
Yeah, no, I think your read on this was a little off, Becky. Like, I get why you have that read, but I don't think it quite fits what they were
actually
going with.
It is Ruto who becomes that. In the foil response, he's like, no, actually a doctor should just care about, the doctor should do all that he can to cure the patient and then move on. And he kind of has this really utilitarian look on his ability too.
I just didn't get any sense that the Dr. Guji had any like personal interest in Maria. Like, yeah,
I guess it is between the lines. It's like it's a subtextual romance, but I that's how I read it. I picked up on that. That's what I thought.
I wouldn't even say romance. It's just like fixation.
True. It's just desire.
Well, that's the thing. He's fixated on undoing his past mistake and proving that he is a good doctor who fixes his past mistakes, and not a bad doctor who ruins people's lives.
It's a problematic desire. I mean, it's put up with, they have this author self-insert, just like say how do you say it? I'm going to say Munchausen. Yeah, Munchausen syndrome. Because I mean, there's a kind of just abject fascination here, which is not connecting with the reality of either of these two characters.
Yeah, so Cranker and Doctor are a really interesting, intricately problematic couple, right? And like Cranker's side of this is she's in love with Dr. Guji. That's very explicitly said. So in real life, she's his patient. In Redo, she's his patient, and her fantasy is not just being Doctor's patient. It's she can actually walk in Redo, because after you fight the Doctor and knock him out, she stands up out of her wheelchair and attacks you. But her fantasy in Redo seems to be pretending not to be able to walk so that the Doctor will keep treating her. And she's very conflicted because she said, IRL, she's like, well, I want Dr. Guji to smile again. He hasn't smiled since the operation. And what I care about is him smiling again, which he's not going to smile until he successfully treats me so that I can walk again. But I don't want that, because then I will have to then he will move on from me because he is a professional doctor and he's not interested in me. She doesn't seem to think she has any hold over him apart from his fixation on fixing her. And the importing of the Munchausen syndrome term. So Munchausen syndrome is actually the case history is quite disturbing to read on conditions, on specific medical cases that have been labeled Munchausen syndrome. Typically involves somebody deliberately injuring themselves or poisoning themselves to obtain medical treatment because of some fixation on being medically treated or on a particular doctor. There is a gulf between the actual case history where this term has been used. By the way, quick note: Munchausen syndrome is not a term that's in use formally anymore. There's a modern term that has replaced Munchausen syndrome because there's lots of reasons that quote unquote Munchausen syndrome is a bad name for it. But the stereotype story of Munchausen syndrome, which is definitely what Ryuto is thinking of and what the writers are thinking of when they have Ryuto say Munchausen syndrome, is a woman is in love with the doctor and she pretends to be ill so that the doctor will treat her. Which is I mean, it's just misogynistic, right? Just straight up. That's the medical misogyny that leads to doctors doing a poor job of treating women patients because they dismiss women's symptoms as hysterical or imagined or hypochondriac or all that stuff. And I think it's really unfortunate actually that they brought that terminology in. But the relationship dynamic there, I think, is fascinating. Like this is a truly, genuinely toxic relationship that these two characters have, that is handled. Apart from bringing in the Munchausen syndrome term, I don't think it's particularly sensationalized. Right? It's handled kind of matter of factly. And
at least now that I'm going over it, no one lectures Maria. There's a lot of lectures for the doctor, but no one really, no one does like the stereotypical thing you would say to someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And my problem with the representation in Maria and also in Marie is not really related to this. I'm glad that we've been able to talk through it separately, because when I talk through like the representation stuff I want to get to, I want to be able to bracket this. Because if there is a representational issue here, it is much more the misogyny than it is anything to do specifically with disability. Even though it manifests through, like in this case, a woman simulating being disabled, or simulating being disabled, because she is actually disabled, but in Redo she's not disabled. She's simulating being disabled. Complicated.
That is such a conflicted symbol. I didn't like those characters, so I honestly just wrote them off. But as a disabled person, I would maybe choose to be disabled. Like if I had like the instant redo thing and I had to choose, and so she also made that choice to be disabled, because in this instance it's because of a silly like melodramatic toxic relationship. But on the other hand, there's still like something integral to her identity that includes disability, and so she chooses to do it.
Yeah, so like when the characters kind of first encounter Maria at the start of her storyline, there is a moment where they're like, hang on, we're in the ideal world. Why would anybody's ideal world include them being disabled? And I got really hopeful at that point that the game would make that step of saying, well, no, some people who are disabled do not want to be cured. They want to be accommodated, right? They don't care about being quote unquote fixed. What they want is a world that will treat them equitably, including their disability. I have some examples. Like again, this is all the representational ethics stuff I'll get into. But there are definitely examples. There are loads of examples in the real world of this in disability activism, in disabled communities, of people. The famous example is autism, right? There's a whole kind of group of doctors who want to cure autism because they think autism is a problem, and then there are a whole bunch of autistic people who are like, no, there is nothing wrong with me being autistic. What is the problem is that the world is hostile to autistic people, and that's what should change, not us. We could also look at like wheelchair athletes, right? Lots of wheelchair users are dancers or sports people of immense skill and proficiency, and don't feel. This is why you're not supposed to use the term wheelchair bound, right? People aren't bound to their wheelchairs; they use their wheelchairs.
This is also similar to the fat acceptance movement. It's like
fat acceptance, mad pride. There's a whole bunch of these movements. Deaf pride is another one. Like deaf culture and the idea of being culturally deaf. People whose first language is sign have their own distinct culture, and it's okay to want to be part of that culture and not be cured and kind of distanced from it. All of which is built on earlier ideas about race, right? The Western colonists who went to the Americas thought that native cultures were effectively sick cultures, disabled cultures, deficient cultures, and they tried to fix them by imposing Western values. And that was a huge, like, centuries-long abuse, which we're still feeling the ramifications of today. There's a continuity through the colonial era to the present day of the prevailing societal idea coming from the rich capitalist nations that every life should be a certain way, and people who can't live that way should be forcibly conformed to it. And of resistance to that in the form of people who don't conform to it, saying, no, we want to live our lives this way, and that's fine. And the game gets this very right with Gin, for example, where it's like the ultimate conclusion on that one is you should get to live your life the way you want, and we shouldn't impose these gender roles on you arbitrarily. With disability, I think it doesn't do quite such a good job.
Yeah, I feel like that's true of a lot of people who don't have to deal with disability.
Yes, it extremely is. And like,
so I'm not terribly surprised that was the case here, but I am a little disappointed nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, full mea culpa. I learned about this stuff. So I used to work in disability support, right, for a while when I was doing my PhD. My like day job was in class disability support for students, and I was actually attached to a student who was on a disability studies course where they worked through this stuff. It's called the social model of disability, or like the introductory curriculum on this is on the social model of disability. And when I first encountered these ideas, holy shit, did I not like them. I thought that this is wrong and bad and nobody should ever want to be disabled and this is sickening. And it took me a long time and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of being prodded to change how I saw the world. Like the default view in dominant cultures, and like you can't really call Japan like a Western culture, but it is definitely dominant in the ways that Western cultures are dominant. It owes a lot, like a lot of the dominant institutions of Japanese culture owe a lot to the dominant institutions of Western culture. And this problem translates like that idea that a certain way of life is right and is institutionally ordained has a lot of power. And it was only by getting a grasp on that I was later able to like make the same insight for gender and realize that I needed to transition. I'm deeply indebted to the disabled people who took the time to like get me over that hump. So yeah, I had some pretty strong feelings about how that's handled in the context of this game, because video games rarely deal with disability at all, and this game tackles it so head on and is so successful at tackling social issues head on in other areas that for it to fluff this one up in this case is disappointing. And it's not great on other issues. Like there's some misogyny that we've talked about. It doesn't engage with race at all or class. But that's the kind of the cranker breakdown, I suppose. And Doctor and like the representation of disability. Where's that get us up to with characters?
We only have Kobato left, who is. We basically have covered all of his bits, and his counterpoint is QP.
Right, yeah, we haven't talked about QP that much. Who is? Well, I know we did. Like, she's there to pick up boys,
or girls,
or girls if you're a girl, yeah, like she at one point she basically says, look, if you become more powerful than Regret, if it looks like you're going to beat Regret, then I will switch sides in a second. Because I am here to find a boy and then meet him in the real world. like form a relationship, and it's not 100% clear why or
Because-
what deeper motivation she has around that.
I mean, literally all it is like she missed a window to get into the dating scene. Like that's the thing.
That's true. That makes it a little bit extra creepy that her last shot in the game is her being carried off by Machina, who is a 15-year-old boy, while she's 29, and she's like considering making him her boy, which is a bit
Yeah. Little too femcel for me, thank you. She's cute, but not that cute.
So you make your way through the game. There's this big confrontation with around like Marie, and are we going to kill Marie to save ourselves? And then you don't kill Marie to save yourselves, which is the right thing. And then you keep moving through the working your way through the various musicians as they try to like work their designs on you. Kudan is the last one. Who is Kudan's foil?
Nico.
Nico, we didn't talk
Nico.
about
Oh
Nico.
god, no, we haven't talked about Nico. Because both of them are about like doing things for their parents, basically, in the broadest kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Nico, when you meet her, is like the Genki girl archetype. She's super cheery. She's always happy to see you. She's bubbly and full of energy and a little bit kind of silly and disorganized. And what you learn about her is that she's the character she is playing as Nico in Redo is actually her IRL sister. And I forget, they're twins, I think.
Yeah, they're twins, but Nico is the younger one.
Yeah, and Nico, and these twins in real life, her name is it Iori? Iori. So Nico is bright and bubbly, and Iori is super reserved and introverted. And their parents love Nico and don't really nurture Iori, and then Nico dies, and the parents refuse to accept that Nico has died, and they force Iori to behave as Nico and pretend to be Nico. And then her Redo fantasy is actually being Nico.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get to know her better and start to press on that facade starts to crack. She's the one for whom it's like the clearest kind of appearance that Redo has imposed a personality layer on her.
I don't think that's actually true. I think she is just acting because she wants to honor Nico's memory. And
I actually thought the same as Becky. I feel like she wasn't Iori until Key disabled Redo, and then she became destabilized. Kind of how Marie didn't have any memories of Wicked until they were unlocked.
I guess that kind of gets into what makes a personality, because getting the memories back of the real world. But I think there's not an explicit you get a new personality. It's just we're going to replace the bad memories with Redo memories, and then however that.
Well, I mean, it's implied her wish is to be Nico, so she's becomes this reconstructed Nico from her memory. So it is still her, but it's kind of, I don't know. The identity is what?
I guess it depends how much you think that could be achieved just by changing her memories.
Which I think she knew her well enough that she could get away with that.
I mean, that is a very, very kind of speculative philosophical question. It's how much of your character and personality in the present moment are purely a product of having the memories you have versus other stuff. But
like I said, I don't think there's an explicit separate layer of there's a personality change. I think there were memories changed and the personality formed from that, which is why I kind of was I don't know about that when you brought up like, oh, there's a personality layer to this. Like,
It's like just an analogy to understand it. I don't know. It's fine either way.
Yeah, it doesn't like this doesn't really matter a great deal one way or the other. Like your interpretation and mine both lead us to the same place when talking about this game specifically.
yeah, I know, but I'm just like conflating the two is what kind of ticked me off a little. But,
Anyway, so like in Redo, she's Nico, and like because she doesn't value her life as Iori, she's kind of adopted the same attitude to herself as Iori that her parents have, which is tragic and kind of abusive.
Mhm.
And then like Kudan, we've talked about, is like is trying to like develop the mind control powers that come with Redo's operation as a tool for her political father. I don't really know that I think there's resolution to Nico's story necessarily. Like,
I mean,
not
she
like
refuses resolution in any way.
Well,
yeah.
There was a missing component of the framing. It happens in her story, I remember. She actually confesses that she convinces her parents that she's Iori. So like,
yeah,
her family situation is that they've accepted she's now Iori, and now they don't want to talk to her anymore.
Yeah.
And they're still grieving over Nico. So I guess the resolution is just I'm going to be Iori. Yeah.
yeah, but
her parents
have
are
this
fucked up. Like,
yeah, straight up.
they're real fucking bad.
yeah, like
I mean, there aren't many. Like, is every parent who is a significant part of their child's story in this bad? Like, Marie's parents are bad. Nico's parents are bad. Regret's parent is bad.
yeah, no, it turns out parents are kind of just dog shit when they influence
their
kids too much.
They're all fucked up by that filialness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that is a very kind of young adult story thing, and this is a young adult story. Like, yeah, all the parents are fucked up.
Yeah, it is, but contrast with Persona, where it's like, yeah, but your parents are fucked up, but you should apologize for them, and you should actually take your parents' advice into account, and actually your parents know better than you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No. It infinitely preferable to Persona 4.
Yep.
Happens in Persona 5 too.
Yeah, it's not great. I like Persona 5, which makes me the weirdo here, but like, it's not great.
Yeah.
Persona 5 has its moments.
Yeah, Royal has more moments. I genuinely like the additions Royal made to the story, but that's a different topic for a different time, and probably not an LGC topic.
Yeah. You can do a Let's Play and talk about it there.
Fuck off.
Okay, so that's Nico and Kudan.
Now we are actually out of party members.
And we get to Bluffman and Regret. So at the end of the game, you've kind of defeated. You've worked your way through all the musicians and you've escaped their schemes. And Bluffman moves his plan to the next stage, which is sort of glorping all of Redo and all the people in it to power up Regret so that she can make a bigger Redo, which he calls Redo, which I'm still not over. The lack of imagination there.
That's the thing, though. The lack of imagination is his whole fucking thing.
One of my favorite lines is Bluffman's like, I don't even know if music sounds good or not. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
He would be like Redo.
His name is fucking Bluffman because it's all a fucking bluff. Like, that's literally just...
It gets really like hard allegorical at this point.
Yeah. And like because of Key's evolving powers, you defeat the musicians, you're able to find the Tower of Epimetheus. I didn't look up. I meant to look up and remind myself was Epimetheus like Prometheus's brother
Yes.
or something? Right.
Also,
And-
hold on 1 second. I just looked at the cafe collab for Bluffman. It's literally just black coffee with gold leaf in it. Holy shit. Anyway.
In Greek mythology, Epimetheus, literally afterthought, was the brother of Prometheus,
Yeah.
whose name is traditionally interpreted as foresight or forethinker. And they acted as representatives of mankind. While Prometheus is characterized as ingenious and clever, Epimetheus is depicted as foolish. Right, that's what I remember you looking up on earlier. So the tower is called the Tower of Epimetheus, which is where like Bluffman's HQ is and the musician's HQ is. And you go to the tower and you fight your way up the tower and you refight the bosses along the way. And there are opportunities for various characters to give their thematic statements, and some of them suck. Then you get to Bluffman, who reveals that he is Regret's father and that he created Redo because Regret is basically the read I got was severely autistic. You know, doesn't often non-verbal,
Bad with social cues.
extremely bad with social cues, agoraphobic, and like unable to like enter society.
And also a VTuber.
And yeah, so that's the thing. You've been told all game that Regret is a Vocaloid, that she's an AI. It turns out no, she's a real person.
Mhm.
Pretending to be an AI, which, like, I have argued that the foundational moment of VTubing in Kizuna Ai is all about a real human being pretending to be an AI to convince you that the AI technology is better than it is. I was going to give a whole academic paper on that, which I didn't for reasons. I can talk about that another time.
And also, fucking Becky titled her fucking stream VODs the VTuber JRPG when she had no fucking clue whether that was right, because
I was right.
You were right by a technicality. It's a fucking Vocaloid JRPG, and I was right
She
up
was
until
right.
the last 5 fucking minutes of the game.
Brennan Lee Mulligan on actually technically .gif
I'm going to suplex you. Literally.
in March. In Marchcraft.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so she is disabled. You know, a disability again. And Bluffman creates this world in which she can be not disabled. And in which she can be powerful.
And adored and paid attention to by
Yes.
all of our fans.
Which it turns out she's not wild keen on.
Yeah.
And actually she's been helping you all along because she wants to be freed.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way to escape Redo besides killing Marie is to kill Regret. And you get there and she's like, yeah, kill me. And then you fight Bluffman and beat him for being an abusive dad, basically.
Well, another fucked up thing is that Bluffman does like the dad neurosis, and he retains all his memories, so he has all the control of the situation. But he makes it so Regret doesn't know that Bluffman is her dad. She has everything else except for that part. So instead, he's just a stranger blackmailing her.
Yeah, no, like the thing was, she didn't know in the first place. Like he mailed her anonymously. Like he was just doing this from the shadows for his child. And
yeah, true, I guess.
And
I guess I got the order of events wrong. But yeah, she just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you beat Bluffman, you confront Regret, and she's like, "Yeah, kill me. I want this to be over." And then all her fans kind of it's not quite take control of her, but like they speak out against her death, and she's forced to fight you.
Yeah, the way I see it is like the only reason she has the power and the weapons that she does is because of the support from her fans, and thus she can't go against those fans demanding that she save herself. And thus all of her weapons act on their own in a bid to protect her.
Yeah, in a way, it's like Bluffman has forced her into a situation where she cannot choose freedom, right? She can't choose to go against his vision for her. Like that choice is closed off. And the cutscenes around that are really like the writing is jarring there. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Because all the characters talk to Regret. Regret spells out pretty clearly, I don't want to be this. I want you to kill me so that I'm free and so that this ends. And all the characters talk to her as if she's still the mastermind and being selfish about it.
Yeah, and it feels like some editing either happened when it didn't need to or needed to happen when it didn't at the end, where somewhere around there the order of events got mixed up, and like if it was like you meet Regret first and then Bluffman interrupts you, sends Regret away, and then beats the shit out of you and find out, oh, Regret is a person, and like that would make sense. That would flow.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So like after being told by Bluffman and Regret that she's a human and not in control of everything, they still get mad at her. And it's just like
like the party spend a lot of that cutscene yelling at a traumatized autistic child for being dysfunctional. Which is like
there's a whole spectrum actually, because at the very least Kiriko and Sasara don't.
So not all of them.
I think everyone else does.
Yeah. And it, like, I think it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things because the story's pretty clear about what's going on. It's just that it kind of. It's a misstep, and it sucks that the solution still involves like killing a disabled person.
I feel like there was something just straight up missing there, because my understanding of either Mobius and Redo is if you die in real life. So I'm like, is she dead? Because the game was operating in a sense that this is just going to end the simulation, but it doesn't really. I don't know. Like
no, I think the game is pretty clear that she's dead. Like, you have to choose to kill her in real life in order for the characters to get free.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that clear, but that's still you're not wrong. That is like inaccurate. That means that's what the game is saying.
The Marie stuff makes that clear. Like, and if
the thing is, Marie is hold a different kind of power than Regret does, which is why it's not 100% clear that killing Regret will literally kill her. Because like
the thing is, they do not textually say it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
but
no,
it still seems to be that case.
I was under the impression that like Regret, if she died, would not die in real life, but it would shut down the entire like simulation because it wouldn't have like the Overlord whatever like governing it. So it would and Bluffman would be mad about that.
Yeah, and all they'd have to do is just have a side comment by Bluffman saying, just reassuring me, me that it's coded a certain way. They did other bullcrap like that. I don't know why it lapsed there.
They're just little confirmatory things that it would have been nice to have to clear that up.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
I think the ending also, it kind of fell flat for me too. I was like, this doesn't seem like what it was building up to.
Yeah, I mean. I think the ending is a bit weak, but at the same time, I don't care. Like most of the game is strong. Like a game. It often happens that I am disappointed by the endings of games. Most of the games I like because of the stuff in the middle, and I like the stuff in the middle here. I really like the stuff in the middle. I enjoyed this game immensely. I think it's generally narratively pretty strong. We spent a lot of time trying to zero in on some very, very minor points of friction. like around the disability stuff, like around the ending. But they really are actually like tiny little changes would have made it so much better.
Yeah, like these are rocks on a surprisingly solid dirt road.
Yeah.
Like okay, Leroy and I play the first game. I got to a point in like chapter 2 where one of the party members just started spewing some fatphobic bullshit, and then the character in question they're talking about that they're like hunting down turns out to be a trans woman, and it's so fucking bad that it's just like I don't want to play this. I literally stopped.
Yeah, valid. Like, so my biggest sticking point is all the shit around like the paraplegic characters, and even that I think could have been entirely laid to rest if the Crank It and Doctor resolution in the scene where you fight them in the tower had been for Cranky to turn to the Doctor and say, "Look, I don't care about whether I can walk or not. What I care about is I love you." And that would have enabled the Doctor then to let go of the idea of having to cure her.
Well, theoretically, anyway.
That's a very pat resolution, but it's the resolution that enables a disabled person to express the same kind of autonomy that Gin gets to express about like gender. And it would have cost nothing.
Yeah,
it would have taken 3 lines of dialogue.
I really feel like this, like if they do a Caligula 3, they're gonna do another round of reading, and maybe they will fuck up slightly less again. This is good, like genuinely, this level of progress, and hell, this game in general is very good. But it's just like you're so close. You were so close.
Yeah,
you just stumbled over the finish line.
I think I'm not going to give you the entire hour-long lecture on representation ethics because we've already been going for 3 hours, and frankly, we covered the crucial stuff I wanted to get at. But the thing I wanted to say to summarize everything is, if you want to do ethical analysis of a text, you want to look at this is a work of fiction, and we want to decide whether it is bad in some like deep ethical sense. You have to go deep into the nitty gritty. You can't, like, the 2 big kind of popular strategies for representational ethics is like the media effects argument, playing violent video games makes you more violent, or what I call, where is it in my notes? The assumption of intent argument. Like, you like reading stories about abusive relationships, therefore you must be an abuser, right? And both of those are way too sweeping. Like, you can't do representational ethics at that level. You have to look at the nitty gritty of the text. And like, it really does come down to, this is good on trans because in the scenes with the trans character's autonomy is centered, and it's less good on disability because it doesn't give the disabled characters that opportunity to assert the value of their own lives. It's always about other characters saying, well, their life must not be worth living because they can't walk.
Yeah.
Which, that's what rankled. And you have to really get down into the guts of it.
I have to wonder how much of that is due to Japan's views on disability. Like, I don't have a firm grasp on what that would look like.
I mean, like,
well, without disability, the thing is, with like, so I think I was tired and I didn't care. I was actually like just turned off. Like, I wasn't paying close attention to the game anymore because the Bluffman stuff just like was dumb to me.
Yeah.
But the when they were, I felt like a little wrinkle when they were treating Regret's thing as this, because she's a NEET, and they treat it as this kind of deficiency in her character.
Yeah.
Some of the party members do. And I would expect that to Kobato, which is funny because he has the same problem. But I think there's a sense of like there's this kind of that's the tension here. There's a lot of tensions in the game where there are things that are that get isolated as deficiencies that you can work on, and sometimes that's just not actually how these problems are relating to society.
Yeah, like definitely, Japan, particularly on mental illnesses that produce NEET-like behavior, is pretty bad. culturally.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is fairly well established. In terms of mobility impairment, like that's a hugely stigmatized thing in the West. It's probably also a hugely stigmatized thing in Japan, if for nothing else than because Japan has a workaholic culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that workaholic culture values people's ability to labor much the same way we do, which is the grounds of our ableism about mobility impairments.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know what the resources in, like, there is a growing movement for, like, transgender rights in Japan.
Yeah.
Increasing, like, access to transition care and legal recognition, and like the gay rights movement is gaining steam in Japan. So that stuff is definitely current, and it's good that the developers have gone out and engaged with it and learned something from it. I don't know what the status of the equivalent stuff for disability is. It will exist. Absolutely, 100% it will exist.
Yeah.
Well, there are disabled people in Japan. They presumably care about what they're experiencing.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, the thought was, like, I wonder how hard it will be for that discussion to float to the fore.
Yeah, same.
And in a way that would happen before Caligula 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially in this series that is based around, like, escaping reality and all of the problems that you have with it.
Yeah.
This seems like particularly prone to making that misstep. Which is why
it does, but also it has the opportunity.
It does have the opportunity, but they have to find and read those things and do the research, and I don't know if that'll happen before the Caligula 3. Is my
Here's hoping.
Yeah. If we get a Caligula 3, fuck knows with how gaming is going.
Yeah. That's the other question. These are video games. They are made under unspeakable conditions. Who knows? Anyway.
Okay, I will remove the spoiler warning, and we can go. Thank you for coming to Live Genre Chronicles. We're going to be playing Final Fantasy VII Remake next, and we're going to end right before the second game comes out. I'm also going to be playing at least the first, like, third of FF7 Original to refresh myself on the equivalent chunk, at least.
Yeah.
But you can find us in our Discord. Does anyone have any questions? Always got to ask if y'all got questions, but if not...
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably, like, there'll be further discussion of this in Discord as well.
Yeah.
You can always follow up with us there. And yeah, FF7R next.
Yeah. And another good game.
I'm so hyped to play Final Fantasy VII again.
Am I the only one who's actually played FF7R before?
I have played it, but I didn't finish it.
I have not played it, so
I am looking forward to see what you make of the end.
I bought the house.
Right.
I dressed Cloud up, which was great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, looks like that's going to be it for today. Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.